This afternoon, Ghana will pay more interest on its bonds going forward. Now, that's the implication of the downgrade of its credit rating from B to B minus with a negative outlook for the economy. We've now been joined via Zoom by Dr. William Owusu, the Chief Finance Officer of the Valley View University, as well as the former Finance Minister and Executive Director of PFM Tax Africa, Seth Terkper, for some conversation on this situation. They've both been saying that the country's current situation may compel it to go to the IMF for an economic program. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. We shall have you shortly. But first of all, let's pull up the implications that we're gathering from Fitch in this graphic that we've been able to compile in a 4-bullet point, which states clearly the implication that Fitch is raising regarding our debt situation. Fitch assumes that Ghana will be unable to issue bonds on the international capital market this year. Also, as of July 2021, non-resident investors held just below 20%, which is $5.8 billion of Ghana's outstanding domestic government debt. Also, Fitch forecasts that Ghana's fiscal cash deficit will narrow to 9.1% of gross domestic product this year, from 15.1% in 2020 and 12.5% in 2021. Also, the very important notice is that Ghana's bonds were the worst performing as compared to other African compatriots in the last quarter of 2021. I want to start with you, Mrs. Seth Terkper. Is there hope having to see most of these troubling figures from the ratings agency?
Yes, certainly. Hope comes with hard work. And so I would say that there is hope. But we need to do more. And the reason I also say that there could be hope is that Ghana has done, over the years, I would say, past 4 decades, Ghana has had these situations either as a result of domestic situations like drought, and others. Ghana has been part of the shortfall in commodities. And so on. And we have had various austerity, programs. Yes, you may want to say that we do it in conjunction with the IMF, but the governments over the years have been very active in this. I think the difference now is that the markets are not seeing their way through. In the absence of a fund program, you mentioned it, then you must have a homegrown policy, which the markets will have confidence in. You recall that in 2013, we attempted to do a homegrown, then single spine, and the tariff bearing, which came later, together with the lack of flow of gas from Nigeria, pushed us into the IMF, program. Otherwise, it was going to be a homegrown policy. And so I would say that based on, the experience of our public servants, many of whom have been through this many times, and leadership, political leadership, it's possible to get out of it. But again, our own experience tells us that it takes, at the situation we are in now, and given deficit levels, which you mentioned the debt, but deficit levels which the same ratings agencies, the fund and others forecast should be something between 13 and 15%. It could take us up to 3 years to actually normalize the situation. You're talking about 13% or even 11% against our own benchmark of 5%, and that means that, you are, even if you give yourself 5 years, you are looking to, contract the deficit, by an average of 2 percentage points of GDP annually. And that is not, an easy target.
Indeed.
But it is doable. It will require a lot of work. Let me end on this note also that one of the reasons which the markets are a bit uncertain is that we talk about debt, we talk about deficit, and then we talk about revenue, yield levy, taxes. We have not had a detailed discussion of expenditure, because your deficit is revenue minus expenditure. And that is what is driving the deficit. Yes, GRA may have performed well, but what is the expenditure level? And are we therefore able to do better? We are not having a discussion of expenditure. And remember, I'm saying this because we can go over it later on, from personal income tax through capping, through ESLA increases and others. we have been, it is not, yield levy is not the first time, personal income tax, and it's not the first time we are, increasing, revenue. Remember, there is the NHI levy, there is a COVID levy, and others. So we have thrown revenues at this.
All right.
And by the government that, indicates that it would minimize. So what is driving? And I think we can have a discussion on expenditure. If
Great.
we don't,
Great, but Mr. Tekpe, of course, before you leave, would like to take your impression on the implication of this on, our credit ratings. And of course, Fitch has cited a negative outlook as well. I want to get to your advances on this. But in the meantime, I wanted to take a look at the response from the Finance Minister. If you could also put that on the screen for us to appreciate the response from the Finance Minister to not just the Fitch downgrade, but of course, projections from that of Bloomberg. He says, whereas we acknowledge that the current trading levels of our Eurobonds have widened, we do not believe that it is warranted, nor do we believe that it reflects the strong underlying fundamentals of the Ghanaian economy. This is part of excerpts that he made with reference to what we're reading regarding Fitch and Bloomberg. You're a former finance minister. How do you respond to the comment by the finance minister?
Let me clarify. I'm staying for the program, maybe because I alluded to the fact that. So I'm not rushing.
All right.
Yes, I'm committed to stay. But look, what matters is the market sentiment. Ministers of finance like myself, you can be hopeful. You may even have your program. For example, at the time that we had set up the sinking fund, and even at the time when we had used 330 million of our own oil revenues, to pay off, the first sovereign bond, and we had 200 million left in the kitty at a refinancing 250 million. The markets were still jittery. So I think we should address ourselves to the market, and the markets will not be satisfied if we show them a program. So yes, I do see where the minister is coming from. We have been in similar situations, but I must say that when I say we've been in similar situations, some of our current situation is worse. And on the basis that one, we have had 3 oil fields, so our GDP has expanded. And so, if you compare your 80% to even, where we were in terms of HIPIC, before we declared HIPIC, right? You didn't have 3 oil fields. The services sector was not performing as, the services sector was just picking up from the Kufuor era, and became the largest. So we have had the fortune of a larger GDP base, giving all these, fortunate things from 1 oil field to now 3 oil fields, 70,000 barrels to nearly 200,000 barrels, per day. Oil prices have recovered. So if your economy is not performing, I'm afraid comparing current performances to the past, yes, it's warranted because you are comparing GDP. It is an economy that should have been performing much better, and that is the signal the markets are giving to us.
Well noted. We shall appreciate if you could stay a little longer with us, because we have, Dr. William Owusu also on the line. He is an economist with the Valley View University. Doctor, we are grateful for your patience. You've heard Mr. Tekpe, the former finance minister, on his point of view on this development story. You have, made the outlook that we might soon get back to the IMF for some relief. Why do you stand by this particular assertion, and what's going to be the implication?
Thank you very much for calling me and the viewers. As we have been talking about, Mr. Tekpe has mentioned that as we only look at revenue, we must also look at expenditure. So my attention is basically on the revenue side. We anticipate that we are going to have cash flow challenges as a country because the e-levy, which is 7 billion, and we are struggling to pass it. We have reversed, the government has reversed the discount given to on the benchmark value discount, which means that we are going to have a revenue issue. The capital market has also given us a signal, which is this particular report by Fitch, that Ghana is not liquid enough. Let me put it in that way. So we need to find a way to get some inflows coming into the country. If government decide to borrow within the country, what is going to happen is we all know the crowding out effect. Businesses are going to suffer and we will not see a lot of productivity within the country.
All right.
So where we have leverage, because we are members of the fund, that is where we can go and get some support from there. In fact, during the COVID period, we got $1 billion from the fund. So now that we find ourselves in a very tight corner, this is the time for us to be thinking of going with our own program. This has been done by SETEP, which I'm sharing this platform with. And it's not something new that we cannot do. I'm sure as government have said, they are only looking at, they say the finance minister says the fundamentals are solid. But let me also mention that for capital market, it's not only the fundamentals they look at, they also look at the technical analysis. So two main issues have happened in the country on technical analysis, which gives a very not bright future for the country. One is the fight on the e-levy. So if you are an investor and you are doing your analysis on the technical side, it gives a signal that revenue is going to be a challenge.
All right.
Government, in all its projections, they have not mentioned that they are going to do anything about expenditure, which I support what the former minister is saying, that we should look at our expenditure.
Okay.
The capex that we have mentioned to do them in the year, would we have the money to do it? This bankers fund, how much have we put in that one? So these are the issues that we face as a country. And investors on the capital market that I've mentioned, the technical analysis, they do it more than the fundamental analysis.
Sure.
So if the finance minister is saying that our fundamentals are good, what is driving the issue on Fitch is on the technical side. The technical analysis are not making Ghana look brighter. So finance minister, probably our advice, we also have to look at the technical side, the technical analysis when we are into the international market.
Dr. William Owusu, we're grateful for your input there, although much shorter time. But would want to, end with the former finance minister, if he's still on, just a minute of your time regarding what we must do to turn things around in the medium to long term. In just a minute, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Frankly, the short to medium term is a trajectory. We did a previous one. You can look at the budget itself. The projections for 2022 to 2025, and it doesn't show. The Fitch figures is missing one indicator. There's a presumption that we are going to have a positive bailout, which means that there will be a positive outflow. Government will be paying. No. If you see it as a negative flow, which I'm not optimistic to be positive, then the deficit is 43 billion. It's not 87 billion. And therefore, your 7 billion e-levy, again, with even every optimism, is a drop in the ocean, especially when you need to finance. Okay. Let's say 40 billion, that's what we are facing because your arrears are low. So yes, we need to look, what do? We have done it in the past. You need to look at all the lines, you look at the sectors that are giving you problems, energy, financial sector, and the rest. And that is why every program we have had, has had a fiscal element, a monetary element. Bank of Ghana has a role to play in terms of interest rates and the rest. As Doc said, that's going to be impacted, crowding and others.
Sure.
And then you look at the real sector, the ones that give you revenue, the ones that are giving you problems, and you have it. We have done these things in the past. But I think that, let me end by saying that, look, the World Bank, the IMF, Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and as of 3 days ago or a week ago, Reuters, they can't all be wrong.
All right.
They are reflecting what the markets are telling us. And I think that we should listen, to what the markets are telling us.
On the flip side, Mr. Tekwe, are you in correspondence with the finance minister?
I've always responded to that I relate to members of the opposition a lot, because once you have been in parliament, you have friends. But as to whether I relate to the finance minister in a certain form or others, I think I would beg to say that, let me just leave that, as a matter between, former ministers of finance, including mentors like former minister for finance, the senior minister and others, I do talk to quite a number of people in the opposition, and we do, and also that I do write, and I do teach, and therefore I do write, and for the benefit of my students. So my views are not something which I keep to myself.
Great. Mr. Tekpe, we're grateful that you could join us with the analysis on the Fitch, positioning of us to be negative, B- with a negative outlook. But let's still stay on the matters regarding revenue, because the GRA has achieved the revenue target set out by government for last year. Data cited by Joy Business shows that it was able to collect a little over 57 billion cedis ending December 2021. Meanwhile, the Commissioner General of the GRA, Reverend Dr. Owusu, has been explaining to Joy Business what accounts for this record growth in tax collections despite being a pandemic year.
Yeah, I think we realized where we stood and the challenges that are around. And if I would just chip in, normally, if you have read Who Moved My Cheese, when your cheese is moved, you try to find out where can you get other cheese. And those who have read that book. So basically what we're trying to do is to look at various avenues, and we put a number of strategies that will ensure that we will achieve the target. If you recall, some of them, number one, the Ghana card was one issue. Though I will not say that much money has come through the first year yet, but at least it created an awareness, and many people started trying to make sure that they can come in and file their taxes, especially when you made a lot of noise about the professionals. Number two, we talked about the waiver of interests and penalties. And that one, for example, by the time we ended the year, more than 2,100 taxpayers had applied for the waiver of interest and penalty, even at the domestic side only. And the total of about 2.2 billion of debts, out of which about 1.1 billion was paid before the end of December, and another interest of about 400 and penalties of about 600 were waived. So again, these debts has existed for a couple of years, and people took advantage because we saw the pandemic situation, and then put in that policy to say that if you can come in and we give you a spread over 6 months to pay your tax, and you can pay the principal, we're ready to waive the interest and penalties. And many people took advantage of it.
How did digitization also contribute? You have the online payment, so even though it was quite difficult to let these persons go into these companies, do the double checking, there was an online platform where businesses could still pay their taxes. How did that also contribute to the numbers that we saw for end of year 2021?
It contributed significantly because there are two key things that happened last year. One, in terms of being able to file online, and many people filed. And then two, being able to pay online. And for the first time in January, we were able to take off all payments out of our offices. And that created, created room in the offices such that people don't go there to queue. You just go there to transact your tax business. Number two, it removed the issue about dishonored checks and the issue about sometimes money flowing from the authority even to the bank accounts. So we didn't have any dishonored checks because people will only pay when they have the money and they just have to clear. Previously, we had got a lot of checks that come in and they don't get honored. So that was, and then for when people have convenience, paying tax is not easy, as I always say. But if it's convenient for you to pay, then at least you take advantage as well. So one, it blocked some of the leakages, which was like the example of the leak. And then two, it made it convenient for people. So it also helped a lot. And then also digitalization on the port side. When we introduced the ICAMs, I think we introduced, as we saw in 2020, we saw the increases beginning in 2020. And it continued significantly over the year. And that led to customs division doing over 27% year-on-year increase and going over 16 billion. So that aside, that aspect also helped a lot. So digitalization actually really helped. And Ghana.gov coming through, because again, now when we do, the collections are done by the banks within 48 hours. Automatically the money moves to the central bank. Previously, they have to do a manual transfer, and there were also issues about reconciling what have been transferred and what have not been transferred. That was for working with 2 banks. Today we work with 22 banks, and we don't have those reconciliation. And you can imagine if with 2 banks we had reconciliation challenges, if not because of automation, digitalization, we would have never. But when we talked about wanted to introduce all the banks to, the question people ask me, you are struggling with reconciliation with 2 banks. How will you manage 22 banks?
Yeah. George, I think the interaction there with the GRA Commissioner. Away from that, the Oil Palm Development Association in Ghana is calling on the government to immediately reconsider its decision to indefinitely suspend the implementation of the review of the 50% benchmark policy reduction. According to its Executive Secretary, Solon Kwame, local processing companies outweigh the demand in terms of their capacity. He explains that thousands of jobs will be lost if the suspension lingers on. Take a listen.
We think, especially for the oil palm sector, we have the local production outweighs the demand of the people. So we don't see the reason why government will give a discount or a reduction to import of oil palm products into the country, whilst there are companies or industries that are producing the same product in Ghana, and the product that they are producing is more than the consumption of the general public. So that is why we are calling for an exemption. If this policy is not reversed, or if oil palm and its product is not exempted from the policy, there's going to be a lot of loss of jobs. That one we can assure you. And 2 biggest mills or refineries in Ghana right now have shut down their refinery. And once the refineries are shut down, meaning people are going to do what? Will be going home very soon.
Away from that, to the Association of Ghana Industries, they have a new president, Dr. Humphrey Eyim Dake. His induction comes amid challenges facing local industries. Take a listen to his induction speech where he lays out his vision and priorities for local industries.
Ghana is at the crossroad of its industrialization agenda. We have the option to take a path that spearheads us into massive industrial development, or take another path to become an even import-driven economy. And my friends all over the place will appreciate my point in the name of Jesus. Government has opted for industrialization, hence the various initiatives such as the 1 district, 1 factory, planting for food and jobs, the industrial enclave development, and other related policies. We in the Association of Ghana Industries believe that this path is one of the surest way of creating sustainable jobs and ensuring economic growth in the medium to long term. It is in this light that the AGI raised concerns with the introduction of the benchmark reduction policy, which sought to reduce cost of imports into the country. After 2 years of implementation, it appears that it is detrimental to the development of industry in Ghana. Furthermore, it is at variance with government's own industrialization agenda, which is the benchmark discount values.
That'll be it for this edition of The Marketplace. For more news, do log on to myjoyonline.com. My name is Charles Ayete. For me and the rest of the production team, many thanks for watching.